Chapter 25 The Infinite Benevolence of Gurudev. The Guru who does not alleviate sorrows and fears of his disciples is not a Guru at all. Jairam Bhai Kotecha heard these words while offering pranam to Gurudev. As he went regularly to listen to Gurudev's discourses at Andheri, this sentence remained inscribed on his mind. Jamna Das Bhai and his wife were fond of sadhu seva, and Mahatmas often came to their house. When he invited Gurudev to his home, Gurudev replied that he would come someday. When finally Gurudev paid a visit to his house, Jamna Das Bhai offered Sashtang Dandvat Pranam. Gurudev knew about the shrewdness with which Jamna Das Bhai could find out true saints from among false ones. Therefore, whenever he offered pranam, Gurudev would ask, Jamna Das Bhai, is this pranam real or merely a courtesy? Jamna Das Bhai would promptly reply, of course real. How can I offer mere courteous pranam to a true saint and sannyasi like you? Due to this ability of discerning the true form from the false ones, Gurudev had given him the title, the CID of saints. Once, during an argument between Jamna Das Bhai and Jairam Bhai concerning their doubt whether Hanumanji was essential interim deity which must be worshipped for true Ram Bhakti, or whether it was advisable to worship Shri Ram directly, Gurudev intervened and said, listen, try to understand the etymological structure of the name Hanumanta. Shri Hanumanji's name, when thus analyzed, means slayer of ego, and to truly know Shri Ram, one must surrender his ego. Therefore, Hanumanji can be compared to an advocate who would plead our case before Shri Ram, the judge. Thus, in the court of Shri Ram, devotion to Shri Hanumanji would be considered a distinct advantage. Some ladies present in the gathering wished to know whether women could recite Hanuman Chalisa and similar stotras. Gurudev replied, why not? There is no scriptural ban as such. Jairam Bhai put another question. What is dream in wakeful state? He replied, that is samadhi. During samadhi, one experiences unity with Brahman, and the world becomes dreamlike. Jairam Bhai, you always say that Satsang transforms our character, but I have heard that the great saint Raman Maharshi's own brother was unlike the saint, and this person, Sarvadhikari, was all the while engaged in collecting cash from the devotees. Gurudev's explanation was twofold. He said, though both the water and the fish stay in physical contact all the time, their characteristics are totally different. Thus, mere physical proximity is no satsang, which is meeting of minds, then alone it can be called satsang. Secondly, just imagine an ant, which is crossing over a mountain of sugar with his mouth full of salt. Till the ant has the sense to spit out the salt, it can never experience the sweetness of sugar. Similarly, till we cast off our evil vasanas, there is no chance of salvation. Another Mahatma drew Gurudev's attention to the statement attributed to Gandhiji that he only worships the Brahman Ram and not the son of Dashrath. Gurudev merely pointed out that at the end of his prayer meetings, the dhoon that is chanted in Gandhiji's Prarthana Sabha, Patit Pavan Sitaram, makes it quite clear that both the Brahman and Gandhiji's Ram, being Sitapati, are none other than the sons of King Dashrath, and therefore the controversy was futile. Several other questions were 1. Why is Ram called Raghupati? 2. What tangible proof is there for the existence of Ishwar? 3. Gurudev, you lay stress on jap, whereas the scriptures insist on dhyan. Which is best? Gurudev answered each of them with his inimitable clarity and in brief. Here, Raghu means Jeev, and its master, God, is Raghupati. 2. Regarding proof of Ishwar's existence, Gurudev pointed out that the existence of the word Ishwar in itself was proof enough for the presence of the supreme reality in the universe. Secondly, if someone were to stay cooped up in a dark cave, refusing to accept the sun, it does not mean that the sun is not real. Yet another devotee presented the Arya Samaj view point that the formless Brahman cannot acquire human form. Gurudev replied, "Why not? If the Brahman can give form to the entire universe, why then can it not give form to itself according to the likings of his devotees?" While at Andheri, Chabil Bhai felt the need to get prepared a pair of glasses for Gurudev's dimming eyes and gave him the pair along with a pen to write. Making a pointed and loving reference to Dr. Chabil Bhai, Gurudev said, "When I wear glasses, I also remember your hot temper, and when I lift the pen to write, I always think about your well-being." While Gurudev was admitted in a nursing home at Opera House, he came to learn about a sadhu whose intestines had deteriorated due to excessive yogic kriyas, and the sadhu also happened to be in the same nursing room. For the sadhu's benefit, Gurudev took an orange, chanted some mantra and gave it to the sadhu. After some time, due to Gurudev's blessings, he was once again restored to good health. Since Jairam Bhai's house was nearby, he requested Gurudev to come to his home. When Pujya Shri visited them, Jairam Bhai performed ceremonial arti and requested Gurudev to initiate both himself and his wife. He lovingly agreed, initiated them, and also gave them the kanthi. By way of autographing on his photo, he wrote a devotional couplet in Hindi. Later, when Gurudev visited Prakashanandji to inquire after his health, Prakashanandji said, "One who can control his vrittis and vasanas is a saint, but one who is completely devoid of these two is God." Saying thus, he wished to indicate the divine nature of Gurudev. After a few days, as Gurudev had known in advance, Prakashanandji left the mortal world. I give below, in Jairam Bhai's own words, how Gurudev was instrumental in making him truly feel free from all his fears and sorrows. In 1952, my business suffered a great setback. Being prostrated with grief, I wrote to Gurudev, who gave me courage by replying, "Don't worry, if you surrender unto the will of God, in due course, all calamities will pass away." Gurudev's electrifying prediction came to be true. Slowly but steadily things improved and finally returned to normal. At another point of time, I was suffering from severe dysentery and dehydration had set in. Death was staring at me right in the face. I repeatedly chanted Gurudev's name and wrote to him in Orissa. He caught the first train for Bombay and drove straight to my nursing home. He came to my bed and passed his benign hands lovingly over my head, and slowly I recovered, defying sure and certain death. This is how Gurudev made his own words, heard by Jairam Bhai at the beginning of this chapter, come true. A true Guru is one who removes fears and sorrows from his disciple's life. Seek and thou shalt be given. Pray and thou shalt be granted. Jai Shri Ram. Chapter 26. Nothing is impossible for a true tapasvi. Both the Bombay and Rajkot devotees wished that on Guru Purnima of 1949, Pujya Shri should be present among them. Finally, a via media was found. On the same day, after accepting pranam from the Bombay devotees, he would go to Rajkot by plane and then return likewise to Bombay on the same day by evening. As planned, after the Bombay function, he went to Rajkot. The devotees had chartered a plane from Bombay for his return journey. Though the pilot went right up to Rajkot, he could not locate the airport. Maybe because the Rajkot devotees were to have the good fortune to have Gurudev with them for an extra day. Finally, on the next day, Chabil Bhai and Batuk Bhai accompanied the plane and showed the Rajkot airport to the pilot. On their return journey, while they were having some tea, the plane as though flew into a death trap. A vicious cyclonic storm surrounded it and the pilot lost control over the flight mechanism. The plane lost altitude and was being tossed around like a reed. Realizing the danger, the devotees aboard started recitation of Hanuman Chalisa and praying for dear life. Being aware of the fact that a great saint was on board, the pilot surrendered himself unto him by mentally prostrating at his feet and prayed for salvation from the impending calamity. Dev Karan Bhai asked Gurudev, Baba, what shall we do now? With absolute self-confidence and in a controlled and solemn tone he said, Do not worry, everything will be fine. As though on cue, in a moment, things returned to normal as if there never had been a storm. In the clear weather, they sighted blue-lighted runway of Bombay airport and the plane landed safely, though in a highly damaged condition. The grateful pilot offered pranam to Gurudev for his divine grace. The pilot had to be towed to the hangar and could never fly again. The unfortunate pilot, who was saved this time, died later as destined in another plane crash. This aerial drama of rescue from sure death for the occupants of the plane was truly an act of God, due to Gurudev's blessings for his devotees. Jai Shri Ram. Chapter 27. Initiation of Dr. Chabil Das Bhai. For Gurudev's stay in Bombay, a kutir near Dindoshi Hills, amidst peaceful surroundings with a small garden, was fixed up. There were flowers all around. Bhagirathi Ma of Pushkar and Hari Bhai were to be in attendance upon Gurudev to assist him. Gurudev's strict rule was to cook his own frugal meal of boiled vegetables and wheat tikkad. However, he accepted Bhagirathi Ma's assistance to chop the raw vegetables before he cooked them. Once after his meal, Gurudev asked, Ma, from the order of particles, I feel that you have obtained some other person's assistance in preparing the vegetables. After short, guilty silence, she replied, Yes, I had taken help from the cook. Gurudev could always make out who had touched his food from the aura emanating from such particles. He used to explain that as the waters of a placid lake could get rippled even by the drop of a tiny stone, similarly our mental peace can also be ruffled by the mental processes of the person handling our food. Touch of a serene mind gives sense of peace, and in contrast the touch of a disturbed mind could adversely affect our thought processes. Chabil Bhai was to be initiated in that kutir. Preparations for the yagna fire were completed, but due to the rainy season, the soggy wood was not considered suitable for the fire. On realizing their worries, Gurudev told everyone to leave the room for a while and return later. When they re-entered through the reopened doors after some time, they saw to their surprise that the formerly damp and soggy wood was burning without a trace of smoke and gave out clear fire, as if there was no dampness in the first place. As the Diksha ceremony proceeded, Gurudev said, Chabil, concentrate your gaze unflinchingly at the fire. During the process, Chabil Bhai felt that Gurudev was constantly looking at him alone. Throwing a few drops of water into the fire, Gurudev said, Chabil, now all your past sins have been burnt out by this fire, and henceforth you will have to conduct yourself as I direct you. Now, what will be my Guru Dakshina? Whatever you may ask, replied Chabil Bhai. Gurudev proceeded. Further, Chapel, promise me two things. One, be kind to the poor at all times. And two, because of your profession, there are temptations of female company. So be constant and faithful towards your family and wife. Like our Ishtadev Shri Ram, this will be my Guru Dakshina, and if you deviate from your promise, I am sure to know. Later, Dev Shankar Bhai obtained Gurudev's permission to construct a Ram Mandir in the Kutir grounds, and Pujya Shri attended the inaugural ceremony. In 1949, at Kileshwar near Jamnagar, Gurudev commenced his Kashtaman Upasana. During this period of absolute solitude and silence, a so-called sadhu of a Ghori cult tried to break in to disturb Gurudev by climbing over the compound walls. However, he was scared away by a venomous serpent. Though Bhimji Bapa was in attendance to assist him, Gurudev preferred to do all of his own work. To observe his vow of not meeting anyone else during the Upasana, he would come out at 2 a.m. in the night to draw the necessary water from the adjacent well. Once, however, with a view to please Bhimji Bapa, and as an exception, he used the water drawn by him as a mark of appreciation of Bapa's selfless services. Jai Shri Ram.
Chapter 28. God protects the true devotees from evils. It is my responsibility to secure the well-being of those of my devotees who surrender totally and faithfully unto me, and who place their trust in me alone to the exclusion of all others. God in Gita. The Darbar of Bhadva Shri Chandra Singhji had God prepared a cave-like abode with underground retreat for Gurudev's sadhana. Once, when Gurudev came up from there, after completing his upasana, to sit among devotees, he was looking a bit upset and was constantly massaging his index finger. Chandra Singhji asked, "Bapu, is something wrong?" Gurudev replied, "I felt that some insect down there has bitten me. Let someone go and take a look." When he went down with the lamp, Chandra Singhji was surprised to see a black scorpion lying dead. He brought it up to show to Gurudev, who said, "Poor fellow, he bit me, but instead of me, he died." How very strange and surprising that Gurudev's total immersion in his sadhana and attainment of oneness with Brahman made him unaware and immune to the most painful bite of a deadly scorpion. Once in 1950, in one of the pravachan in Rajkot, Gurudev said, one of the names of God is Vishwambhar, that is, the provider of nourishment to the entire universe. And on one occasion, I experienced this at first hand. I was traveling across a vast, barren and sandy desert with infinite expanse of sand as far as my sight could travel. There was no shade or shelter from the scorching heat. I was extremely hungry, but did not have any provisions with me. Being exhausted and in need of nourishment, I surrendered myself unto God for His grace. Suddenly, as if out of nowhere, a man bearing a basket full of ripe mangoes appeared and asked me, "Babaji, have some mangoes." Then I realized that such a miracle occurred because of my total and wholehearted surrender unto the infinite mercy of Vishwambhar, the nourisher of the universe. In his world we may wake up hungry, but he would not allow us to sleep with an empty belly. Gurudev was extremely fond of distributing mangoes among the children and also watching them eating it. On his visits to Guna in Anandpur during season, he would often load the cars with mangoes and distribute them among the kids. They in turn showed their love for him by fondly calling him Aam Baba, the Mango Saint. Jai Bhagwan. Chapter 29. I Camp begins at Chitrakoot. The Srimad Bhagwat says, immersing themselves in thoughts of public good, the saints forget themselves, and therefore God fulfills all their resolves. Once Gurudev came across a helpless blind man who dashed with a wall and was badly hurt on the head. At this sight, his tender heart was very much pained, and he resolved to organize some system whereby persons whose eyesight could be corrected would be helped. During that time, Princess Kanakba of Rajkot had died prematurely. Gurudev consoled the grief-stricken parents with kind and compassionate words. They had set aside rupees 10,000 to commemorate the late princess, and they placed the sum at Gurudev's feet with full discretionary powers about use. After some time, when Gurudev was in Bombay, Nenshi Bhai, whose wife had recently died with uncured blindness, came to meet them. Her two sons, Harshad Bhai and Devkaran Bhai, felt sad because despite their wealth and best treatment, their mother's blindness could not be cured. Once in Chandivali, Gurudev told them pointedly, even now you can be of service to your late mother by being of service to the thousands of such mothers who need your help and are all over India. He added, I have a deposit of rupees 10,000 in Sitapur PO to be utilized in the memory of Kanakpa, the late princess of Rajkot. You can contribute whatever you choose. Thus the idea of the first eye camp was crystallizing around the name of Kanakpa. Gurudev left for Chitrakoot. The news that an eye camp was being organized spread like wildfire. The simple villagers could not understand what an eye camp meant, but for them whatever their Bade Sarkar did could not be anything short of a miracle. On receiving the news about eye camp, Avanti Bai rushed to Chitrakoot. But after initial greetings, instead of welcoming their enthusiasm, Gurudev told them to return to Anandpur. She was puzzled at this rebuff, but understood when they returned to Anandpur. During their absence, Ramesh Bhai had lost his wife, and he was almost out of his mind and needed their healing company. At the end of 1950, on Kartik Shud 1st, the eye camp was inaugurated by Gurudev, and Dr. Ratilal Shah performed his first operation. Gurudev stayed at Janki Kund, but the patients and the volunteers were accommodated in a camp at Pramodvan, about a mile's distance from the Kund. Being the first such camp, the arrangements were of a makeshift nature. The patients had to sleep on straw beds. There was neither a conventional operation theatre nor beds or cots for the patients. The wooden charpoy, strung with coir, had to serve as tables, and the shamiana, erected in the open, served as an operation theatre. No sooner one operation got over than another patient was carried in on a cot by the volunteers. For all the works, such as fetching in and out of patients, post-operative care, treatment, catering, etc., only a very limited number of volunteers were available. However, despite this shortage of manpower, the enthusiastic volunteers worked for long hours, and their energies were recharged by the benign touch of Gurudev's hands, which he placed on their head when they offered their pranam. Some of them were so surcharged with almost superhuman energy that they worked at times for 20 to 22 hours at a stretch. Gurudev's encouraging words resounded in their minds. These needy and poor patients are incarnation of Lord Narayan, and they have come to us in this disguise to make our services unto him worthy and worthwhile. Those attending on Gurudev say that for all 4 weeks of the camp, no one saw him sleeping. Even at the end of a tiring day, he would prepare a sumptuous meal for nourishment of the volunteers. Despite round-the-clock exertion, none could see even a trace of fatigue on his serene face. In those days, there was a dense forest full of wild and ferocious animals like lions, tigers, cheetahs, etc. around Chitrakoot. They roamed freely, even in broad daylight. In view of this, Gurudev had drawn an invisible boundary line with his yogic powers, beyond which these beasts could not come. On the last day of the camp, Gurudev took all the devotees to Ansuyaji, and on the way showed them his kutir on the bank of the Juri river, in which he stayed for his tapasya. He also showed them the mango tree planted by him. From the adjacent grounds, he dug out some roots and potatoes used by him as food during that period. He treated them to a sumptuous feast over there. In that eye camp, about 13,000 patients were examined. 1,000 operations were performed with a success rate of 96%. On the concluding day, Devkaran Bhai recalled that it was the Punya Tithi of his mother. Thus, Gurudev had chosen an auspicious day for concluding the camp. A Panchkoshi Bhandara was also organized, whereby saints within 25 miles of the camp were served with meals. Thus, a true service was indeed rendered to the memory of Devkaran Bhai's mother. When concluding the camp, Gurudev addressed all the devotees in a voice surcharged with emotion. With the grace of Shri Ram and your untiring zeal and efforts, we have been able to organize this camp without a hitch. You have seen for yourself the deep sense of gratitude on those faces whose eyesights have been restored. In all humanity, we must believe that instead of our being of service to them, these patients have made our efforts worthwhile by coming to us. Your work here has been unprecedented and worthy. What can I do for you in return? They replied as if in one voice, Bapu, we want nothing more than your blessings to be able to serve under you. Gurudev gave his blessings thus. May God give you health, wealth, and may He enable you to serve even better in the future. Our next eye camp will be in Guna. Gurudev explained to the devotees that service in an eye camp was not an ordinary matter. These services of poor and downtrodden people had the inherent potential of washing away our sins of the past. Thus assured, the devotees felt this to be a God-given opportunity for atonement of sins, and they went home with renewed faith and determination to participate in similar camps again and again. During the eye camp, people saw various aspects of Gurudev's personality. His abiding love for suffering humanity, his sense of being in harmony with God, so that while serving each and every person, he felt that he was rendering this service to God himself. By his acts, Gurudev set an example for mankind in general and for his devotees in particular, that service of humanity was the true service of God. By way of analogy of confluence of the three sacred rivers, Ganga, Yamuna and Saraswati, we can call the eye camps the confluence of the poor man's body, the rich man's wealth, and the efforts of the middle class coming together, with Gurudev's person as the holy Prayagraj. He bid goodbye to all the devotees, telling them to return to their homes, and informed them that he was thinking of undertaking Kashtamon, Upasana, with the blessings of God, and he left Chitrakoot. Jai Bhagwan. Sarve Sukhina Santu, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kaschit dukhamapnuyat.